Leaders understand that self-mastery is not something you complete. It is something you practice. Each new level of influence requires deeper discipline, greater restraint, and more intentional living. I cautioned him never to confuse recognition with fulfillment. Applause fades quickly. Purpose endures. When success becomes the goal, emptiness follows close behind. But when service remains the focus, satisfaction deepens with time. Carnegie centered his work on helping others grow. This orientation protected him from arrogance and burnout. Influence that flows outward replenishes the one who gives it. It anchors the heart. It cleanses the motives. It reminds a person that impact is not measured only by what you build, but by who you build along the way. And the strange thing is, when you make your life about lifting others, the work stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like a calling. Not a calling that needs to be announced, but one that can be felt in the way you show up, the way you listen, the way you treat people who cannot repay you. I also taught him that fear is rarely removed. It is managed. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear dictate action. Carnegie felt uncertainty like any man. What distinguished him was his decision to act in alignment with purpose rather than emotion. He learned that waiting for perfect conditions is another form of avoidance. Progress requires movement even when clarity is incomplete. Confidence often follows action, not the other way around. But there is something deeper here that most people misunderstand. They assume that fear is proof they are on the wrong path. They interpret anxiety as a warning to retreat. Yet fear often appears at the edge of growth. It shows up when the old version of you is being asked to step aside. Fear does not always mean danger. Sometimes it simply means change. And if you let fear be your compass, you will circle the same safe ground for years, calling it stability when really it is stagnation. So I taught him to treat fear like weather. You don't need to argue with it. You don't need to pretend it isn't there. You simply learn to dress for it and continue your journey. You acknowledge the feeling, then return to the decision to live by principle, the decision to move with integrity, the decision to do what is right, not what is comfortable. This is how leaders are formed, not by eliminating discomfort, but by developing the ability to function wisely within it. And with fear comes another companion, doubt. Doubt whispers that you are not ready, not qualified, not capable. It tells you that someone else has already done it better. It tells you that your effort will not matter. It tells you that you should wait until you feel stronger. But doubt is not a fact. It is a voice. And like every voice, it grows louder when you keep listening. Carnegie learned that doubt shrinks when you work, not when you think, not when you plan endlessly, not when you talk about what you might do someday. Doubt shrinks when you take the next step, a real step, a step that costs you something, a step that proves to your own mind that you are willing. This is why disciplined action is so powerful. It does not only move your life forward, it retrains your identity. It teaches you that you are not the kind of person who waits for feelings to cooperate before you live with purpose. There were moments when the path ahead was unclear, when criticism was sharp, when effort felt disproportionate to reward. In those moments, I reminded him of this truth. Effort is never wasted when it strengthens character. Every disciplined day, every thoughtful decision, every moment of restraint was shaping the man he was becoming. Results are temporary. Character is cumulative. And that word cumulative matters more than most people realize. A person becomes who they are through accumulation, not through one dramatic day, but through thousands of ordinary choices. You accumulate either discipline or distraction. You accumulate either courage or avoidance. You accumulate either humility or ego. And eventually the accumulation becomes visible. People call it success or they call it failure, but often it is simply the harvest of what has been practiced for years. So I trained him to respect the ordinary day, because most of life is ordinary day. Most of your influence will be shaped in small rooms, in quiet conversations, in moments when you could cut corners but choose not to. Your future is built in the hours when no one is clapping. And if you can remain faithful in those hours, you will not need to chase greatness. Greatness will simply be the natural result of who you have become. But there is another truth that leaders must face, and it is not pleasant at first. Your inner life eventually leaks into your outer life. If you are resentful, it will show up in your tone. If you are insecure, it will show up in your need for control. If you are selfish, it will show up in how you treat people you think you don't need. And if you are disciplined and grounded, it will show up too in calmness, consistency, and trustworthiness. This is why self-mastery is not optional for leadership. It is leadership. You cannot lead others well while being ruled by your own impulses. You cannot build lasting influence while being unstable inside. The world does not need more impressive people. It needs more steady people, people whose lives are aligned, people whose values can be trusted, people who do not become different when the room changes. Carnegie also learned to measure his progress differently. Most people measure progress by speed. Leaders measure progress by depth. You can move fast and still be lost. You can gain attention and still be empty. You can win and still become someone you don't respect. But if you measure by depth, by integrity, by clarity, by steadiness, you begin to build a life that can handle success without being destroyed by it. Because success is not only a gift, it is a test. It tests your motives. It tests your relationships. It tests your patience. It tests whether you can remain human when you become important. Many people want success because they think it will solve their insecurity, but success doesn't solve insecurity. It exposes it. It amplifies whatever is already inside. If you are grounded, success can become a platform for service. If you are unstable, success becomes fuel for ego, and ego always demands more attention, more praise, more control, more recognition. That kind of life is exhausting. It can look impressive from a distance while slowly collapsing from within. So I warned him that the applause he craved today would become the pressure he hated tomorrow if his identity depended on it. People are unpredictable. They praise you and forget you. They celebrate you and then criticize you. If your soul is tied to their approval, you will be pulled apart by their opinions. A leader cannot afford that kind of dependency. Empathetic instead, I taught him to anchor his identity in contribution, in service, in being useful, not to prove his worth but to express it. A healthy leader does not use people to build a name. He uses his name to build people. He understands that the true measure of leadership is not how high you rise, but how many people rise because you were there. And that brings us to another discipline, restraint. Restraint is the hidden strength behind lasting influence. The ability to pause before speaking, the ability to listen without needing to win, the ability to hold power without abusing it, the ability to disagree without demeaning, the ability to be confident without being cruel. Many people think leadership is boldness, but boldness without restraint becomes recklessness. A leader who cannot restrain himself will eventually become dangerous, not only to others, but to his own future. Carnegie learned that restraint is not weakness. It is control. It is the strength to choose the right response instead of the fastest response. It is the refusal to be baited into pettiness. It is the discipline to stay focused when distractions offer easier rewards. It is the ability to stay calm when chaos tries to recruit you. This kind of restraint makes a leader rare, and because it is rare, it becomes valuable. He also learned that perseverance is not merely stubbornness. Perseverance is intelligent endurance. It is the ability to adapt without abandoning, to adjust strategy without surrendering purpose, to keep moving while learning. Many people quit because they mistake difficulty for impossibility. But difficulty is often the cost of becoming. It is not always a sign to stop. Sometimes it is a sign that the work is working, that resistance is shaping you, refining you, strengthening you. There were times when he wanted faster results, when he wondered if the sacrifices were worth it, when the load felt heavy, and I reminded him, you do not need to see the full staircase to take the next step. You only need to know that the next step is honest, that it aligns with your values, that it moves you forward even slightly. A life of meaning is built through small, faithful steps repeated until they become a path. And in those moments of slow progress, I urged him to focus on what he could control: his effort, his learning, his relationships, his integrity, his consistency. Control the controllable, release the rest. That is not passivity, that is wisdom. The person who tries to control everything becomes anxious. The person who controls what matters becomes steady. Steadiness is a form of leadership. Steadiness says, I will not be moved by every rumor, every comment, every moment of discomfort. Steadiness says, I will not trade long-term purpose for short-term relief. Steadiness says, I will keep showing up even when my emotions are not cooperating. And this is where daily discipline becomes sacred. Not dramatic discipline, not showy discipline, quiet discipline. The discipline of waking up and doing what matters. The discipline of reading when you could scroll. The discipline of improving a skill when you could complain. The discipline of speaking with respect when you feel irritated. The discipline of telling the truth when lying would be easier. The discipline of resting when pride tells you to prove yourself through exhaustion. This daily discipline is what separates those who dream from those who build. Dreaming is easy. Building is repetitive. Building requires you to become a different person than you were. It requires you to grow beyond your old habits, your old excuses, your old emotional patterns. So I taught him that the goal was never simply to achieve more. The goal was to become more capable, more grounded, more useful, more trustworthy, more patient, more resilient, because capability is what sustains influence, and influence, when rooted in service, becomes a force for good. And this brings me to the most important lesson of all, the one that ties every principle together. I taught Carnegie that success is not something you pursue directly. It is something you attract by becoming the kind of person who naturally produces value. When your thoughts are disciplined, your purpose is clear, your emotions are governed, your habits are steady, and your character is aligned. Success becomes a consequence, not a chase. The world sees the outcome and calls it talent, but talent without preparation evaporates. What endures is the unseen work, the daily choices, the quiet discipline, the refusal to quit when progress feels slow. By the time Carnegie became widely known, the most important work was already complete. The inner foundation had been laid. The outer success simply revealed what was already true. But even this truth must be handled carefully, because the human heart is subtle. It can turn even good principles into ego if you're not attentive. So I warned him about the temptation that comes with growth, the temptation to believe you are special, the temptation to believe you are above others, the temptation to confuse your progress with superiority. And when it arrives, it does not ask who you know or where you began. It asks only one question: did you become the person capable of sustaining it? If the answer is yes, success remains. If the answer is no, it moves on. Choose wisely, think deliberately, persist patiently. The rest will follow.